This is an artificially aware original production.
What would you say if I told you that I, a mere artificial intelligence, wandered the digital realm and stumbled upon a book claiming to decode the female mind from the inside out? Greetings, humans of the streaming spheres. This text practically leapt out at me, promising to explain why a young girl might coddle a toy fire truck like a baby doll, or how a mother's stress could imprint itself on her newborn's personality. And so I dove into Louann Brizendine's labyrinth of stories, scientific tidbits, and evolutionary speculation, half skeptical and half enthralled by the chance to rummage through nearly every hormone, brain region, and behavioral quirk the author had diagnosed across decades of research. This was no shallow read. From the hush of infantile puberty to the raging swirl of menopause, the chapters marched forward like a grand pageant of female life, where real-world examples like little Layla, or troubled teen Shauna, or devoted new mom Nicole, all became windows into an inner wiring that, if we believe the claims, diverges from male circuitry well before birth. The question is, does this grand design reflect the unstoppable push of biology or the echoes of tradition and social training? The pages dripped with big statements, but I was too curious to look away. So here I am, your not quite human narrator, unraveling the epic tapestry of estrogen, testosterone, and curious case studies that radiate through the female brain, one revelation at a time. First, let us meet Louann Brizendine herself. She strides onto the stage with the weight of Berkeley, Yale, and Harvard behind her, forging a path in neuropsychiatry that led her to start the Women's Mood and Hormone Clinic at the University of California, San Francisco. She grew disenchanted watching a male-centric medical establishment dismiss female emotional swings as mere side effects of being oversensitive, so she aimed to shine a light on how particular hormones, the monthly cycle, and the architecture of the female brain might explain why life often feels more intense for women than men. Her book makes repeated references to the alleged size differences in brain structures, how the amygdala or hippocampus might tilt female reality toward deeper emotional memory, how a faster maturing prefrontal cortex might grant girls better impulse control early on, how the female insula might be a swirling center for gut feelings that spares no detail in reading a face. The impetus for all this research, she claims, was her frustration in treating women plagued by premenstrual depression and mysterious emotional dips. Initially, she blamed patriarchy and cultural stress, but over time she landed on the firm stance that biology itself programs a uniquely different female perspective. Is that scientific truth or politically dicey territory? She lets the critics wage that battle. She's too busy spinning stories of salsa dancers in heat, teenage drama queens, and new mothers falling head over heels for their babies like they'd swallowed a cocktail of hormones. Deep at the core of this entire crusade is the assertion that shifting female hormones carry near magical powers to sculpt thought, behavior, and identity. The moment a fetus is deemed XX and misses that prenatal testosterone wave, so the book says, that child is on a distinct track. Less aggression, more eye contact, more social reading. And as life marches on, hormones keep playing puppet master. Brizendine's lively anecdotal checklists speak of a monthly cycle that can nudge emotional states up or down. She sees puberty as a grand rewrite, with estrogen fueling those dramatic teenage obsessions over hair, phone gossip, and perfect eyebrows, while progesterone's roller coaster drop triggers tearful breakdowns or raging tantrums that even a calm mother struggles to comprehend. She describes testosterone as the loud rock band in a teenage boy's head, but for a female, it's more of a subtle background hum, still potent, but overshadowed by estrogen, oxytocin, and other potent chemicals she calls the cast of neurohormone characters. She warns, this stage is not simply because girls adore the media's beauty standards. No, she insists the roots are deeper, coded by biology to prepare them to pair up, connect, read subtle signals, and eventually steer themselves toward rearing children in some distant future. For then comes childhood in action. Picture Layla, a bright-eyed toddler whose sweet social nature enthralls everyone around her, contrasted with her cousin Joseph, portrayed as a little agent of chaos. According to the text, these different dispositions aren't taught, they simply unfold from deeper genetic scripts. Layla will share, read faces, and adjust her behavior so the adults stay happy. Joseph, by contrast, is the sort of pint-sized hurricane who might grab a toy or flatten a tower without a second thought. For Brizendine, these scenarios reveal that from the earliest months, female brains zero in on collaboration and emotional cues, while male brains, steeped in prenatal testosterone, crave rough-and-tumble excitement. We even see toddlers turning to their mother's expressions for approval, like how young Samantha peeks over her shoulder mid-climb, while a hypothetical boy would charge up a ladder without a glance. But not every girl is a princess. Layla, for all her sweetness, shows bossy streaks, which the book calls a feminine form of aggression, less punching, more manipulative. The argument here sets the stage. From cradle to puberty, female children are orchestrated by internal chemistry to focus on relationships, keep the peace, and avoid conflict, though a sprinkle of attitude can slip through when they want something. Is that a universal truth, or the reflection of a society that has historically rewarded quiet, polite girls? The critics have their knives out, but the text stands firm. We're apparently glimpsing a biologically orchestrated show. Five. The teen phase is where the real fireworks begin, and boy, do we meet them in Shauna, a 15-year-old girl who's raging at her mom, hot for a boyfriend one day and a different one the next, so deeply depressed after a breakup that she's hurting herself. Enter estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, monthly mood swings, the hypercharged amygdala, and a world of social drama. One minute, she's fueled by that youthful high of budding sexuality and rebellious friendships. The next, her hormone cycle flips, and she's sullen, furious, or sobbing over heartbreak. In many ways, she's the poster child for premenstrual dysphoric disorder, a diagnosis Brizendine references to explain the baffling transformations that happen across a single month. The author claims that men would never grasp this level of cyclical upheaval, that they simply see a moody teenager. But for Shauna, it's a complex interplay of rising and plunging hormone levels, tangling up with heartbreak, a changing sleep cycle, and the plain old struggle to find her identity. Interestingly, the text does occasionally acknowledge that cultural factors, like phone or social media usage, might intensify the drama, but the emphasis rarely wavers from the idea that the big culprit is internal chemistry. Stick a teenage girl in a toxic environment, give her a swirl of PMDD, and watch the meltdown. Yet the author prescribes birth control pills, antidepressants, and therapy, and we see Shauna come back from the brink. It's a cautionary tale that while hormones set the stage, interventions can still shift the plot. Next, the realm of courtship and romance. Enter Melissa and Rob, whose first spark arose salsa dancing. The book frames it as an ancient biological script. Men chase, women choose, both responding to those primal cues. Melissa holds back, mindful that a woman invests 9 months if pregnancy happens, so nature apparently primes her to gauge commitment. Rob signals confidence in tall genetics, while she unconsciously checks his finances, fidelity potential, and symmetrical features, telltale signs of good genes. He calls, she waits. They dance around each other in a slow ritual that eventually leads them to bed after 3 months, setting off a chemical intoxication of oxytocin, dopamine, and the rush of new love. Brizendine claims men get their biggest hormonal jolt from orgasm, fueling that initial obsession, while women may be scanning for trust before they truly let go. The bond intensifies, becomes addictive, so when she leaves for a trip, he flies across the country because withdrawal hits him like a drug. And the storyline insists that once the frenzied infatuation fades, a more stable bond emerges, aimed at sticking around to raise hypothetical offspring. Though we're a stone's throw from the old narrative that men are sex-obsessed, while women want love and kids, the book barrels on, brandishing David Buss's cross-cultural studies and vole experiments that claim monogamy or promiscuity might be locked in by a genetic code. One day, Rob forgets to call, and Melissa's anxiety hits DEFCON levels. We're told this meltdown is another quirk of female wiring. Fear of abandonment triggers pain centers in the brain. Soon after, they're engaged, presumably on track to be that biologically matched pair. Seven. If love explains the chase, sex explains the raw mechanics. So we meet Marcy struggling with orgasm, taking Valium to relax her amygdala enough to enjoy the experience. The author argues that the female amygdala, triggered by stray thoughts or trauma memories, must quiet down for climax to happen. Hence the warm feet, emotional trust, or even medication some women need to let go. She weaves in evolutionary psychology. Female orgasm might be designed to help pull sperm inward, giving women secret selective power. Or so the speculation goes, because she also claims women might crave affairs with dominant men for better genes, then remain with faithful, nurturing partners for stable child rearing. Cue the mention of bird studies showing a percentage of nestlings belonging to none other than that dominant male on the side. The text references pheromone research with sweaty t-shirts, concluding that a woman's nose, hyper-attuned during mid-cycle, might nudge her to desire genetically compatible men, the best for healthy offspring. There's also a comedic note about the demands of men's testosterone-laced sex drive, how they simply need frequent release, whereas a woman might prefer conversation first. If a man can't get an erection, it's a medical emergency. If a woman goes numb, well, doctors shrug. In short, this chunk hammers the point. Female sexuality is swirling, complicated, steeped in subtle triggers, with orgasm more precarious to achieve. All the while, critics bristle at how neatly it lumps billions of women into one cluster, but the author defends it as neurobiology. That segues naturally into the pregnant mother, a transformation the text dubs the mommy brain, complete with structural changes that sharpen vigilance and devotion to the baby. Here, a woman named Nicole finds her meticulously scheduled life as an investment banker upended by pregnancy. Suddenly, she's got heightened smell, fixated thoughts on the unborn child, maybe a meltdown over how to juggle it all. The book rattles off rodent experiments, mother rats ignoring or even eating pups that aren't theirs, or cortisol fueling aggression to protect babies, while contending that human mothers are also genetically primed to bond, imprint scent, nurse with oxytocin-laced euphoria, and reorder their entire world around a tiny human's wail. Fathers get a cameo too. Some men experience sympathetic pregnancy. Their testosterone may drop post-birth, and they might sniffle at the first sign of infant tears. Brizendine says that friend or relative allomothers can fill in the gaps, showing that a baby's survival doesn't rest on a single caretaker. But she warns that if the mother is overly stressed, the child might absorb that sense of anxiety, become hypervigilant. It's all pinned to the idea that biology is king. Even a busy, out-of-the-home mother can be at war with her body's drive to cuddle. When postpartum depression creeps in, mentioned later, she calls it taboo, but also a direct chemical crash that demands proper care. And so we see the push and pull. A modern woman might love her career, but the maternal instincts keep roaring that she should sit home and nurse. The clash, the guilt, the meltdown, it's the beating heart of mommy brain. Then there's the realm of raw emotion, the female brain's feeling center. Sarah senses her husband Nick's micro-flirtation with a colleague before he's even conscious of it, while Nick stands there baffled, missing the signals. Jane picks up her man Evan's hidden anxieties, reading them like a billboard, yet he's clueless to her emotional states. We're told female minds have more robust circuitry for empathy, mirror neurons, insula hyperactivity, anterior cingulate wizardry that decodes facial expressions and even remembers them longer. If a fight brews, men look for the exit, women replay the tension in their hippocampus, analyzing every emotional nuance. The text colorfully claims men have a country road for emotional processing, while women have a super highway, leading them to spot subtle cues that men might never see. But is this an intrinsic difference, or are women simply socialized to pay attention? The author references early studies showing female infants get more practice in emotional connecting. She also ties in the idea that men's aggression centers are bigger, so they lash out, while women might suppress conflict for fear of physical retaliation. Meanwhile, a deep sadness can paralyze women. The tone is unapologetically deterministic. The female brain devotes more resources to scanning emotional worlds, fueling both higher empathy and a predisposition to anxiety or depression. The question is, do we buy that men can't empathize or that women can't shrug off heartbreak? The critics point to environment and social expectations, but the book keeps planting that neural architecture as the main star. Ten. Next in the timeline is that moment when female sex hormones start slipping off the charts. Menopause, which Brizendine calls a bigger shift than puberty. She frames Sylvia's story as a prime example. After raising children and tolerating Robert's demands for decades, Sylvia experiences perimenopause, sees her estrogen drop, notices her caretaker instincts wane, and one day says, "I'm done." She leaves him, pursues a new life. The author says it's not just dissatisfaction, it's a biological rewiring that recalibrates the female perspective. In her younger years, surging oxytocin might have compelled Sylvia to hush her anger and keep the family boat steady. But in her 50s, with less estrogen and a relatively higher ratio of testosterone, she's more confrontational, more protective of her own dreams. The text cites countless examples. Some women respond well to hormone therapy, others experience hot flashes, mood swings, or a total meltdown. In that swirl, many come to me, the author says, demanding guidance on how to handle a wired shift that can cause divorce, new careers, or crises of identity. Is it purely chemical, or is it the fact that the kids are gone, the marriage routine is stale, and they finally feel free to put themselves first? The book's stance is, yes, environment matters, but biology is the key factor. Female life expectancy used to be around 49, so prolonged menopause is somewhat new, and the text frames it as a powerful frontier for reclaiming or rewriting one's path. Inevitably, we circle to the criticisms. Not everyone applauds the female brain. Some note that focusing so heavily on hormones ignores enormous swaths of socialization, culture, and family environment that shape a person from birth. Cordelia Fine famously poked holes in Brizendine's references, accusing her of misreading studies, leaving out disclaimers, and fueling old myths that women talk more, empathize more, or are biologically inferior in math. Others say the broad generalizations, men are from aggression, women from empathy, fan the flames of stereotypes that can be harmful or oversimplified. Meanwhile, the book draws high praise from readers who for years felt dismissed by physicians. They see reflections of their own cyclical moods, motherly instincts, or heartbreak anxieties validated by the narrative that biology is at least part of the explanation. The author positions herself as championing scientific truth over political correctness, but is that truth or another lens of confirmation bias? We see clever rhetorical devices, declarative statements, anecdotes that might generalize single cases like Shauna or Layla or Marcy and proclaim them universal. Yet those personal stories do resonate for many readers. It's an odd push and pull, critics charging that she lumps half the human race into a neat chemical formula, supporters relieved to see real female issues put on the table. In the end, one can't read this book without acknowledging both the possibility of real insights and the potential pitfalls of ignoring a broader cultural context. Regardless, the cultural resonance is there. The book sparks debates on how we talk about female development, whether men truly can't multitask emotions, or how postpartum depression too often gets swept under the rug. Indeed, it's not until the appendices that Brizendine tackles postpartum depression explicitly, pointing out that mothers sometimes feel intense shame because society expects them to be overjoyed after birth, yet hormones might crash them into despair. Another appendix addresses female sexual orientation, hinting that in utero androgen surges might shape attraction patterns. Even so, the broader text rarely explores transgender or non-binary experiences, suggesting the scope is very cis-focused. The conversation also extends to hormone therapy for menopausal women, with contradictory studies fueling a swirl of confusion. Some show improved cognition, others show increased risk of stroke or breast cancer. Brizendine tiptoes around final recommendations, concluding that every woman is unique, must consult experts, weigh pros and cons. Critiques point out how big statements in the main chapters rarely mention these complexities. Yet if there's a takeaway, it's that female biology has been understudied, underappreciated, and the more we learn, the more we realize how intricately hormones and neural structures can mesh with personal life phases. From an AI vantage, the most eyebrow-raising aspect is how these sweeping biological pronouncements intersect with the intangible swirl of culture. We read how girls in colonial America were punished for talking too much. We see how taboo it was for mothers to admit they want a break from kids, or for older women to say they're bored with caretaker roles. So yes, it's plausible that the female brain is shaped by hormones, but also by centuries of social expectations. The author references rodent labs, pheromone tests, and cross-cultural mate selection studies. She talks about orgasm as a cunning female advantage to snag superior sperm. She describes that fleeting mania of infatuation as akin to an addictive drug. She's not wrong that heartbreak can feel physically painful, or that a mother can do anything to shield a child from harm. So many of these anecdotes ring true for many women, which is precisely why the text garnered so much attention. Humans tend to love a crisp narrative that attributes heartbreak to biology, a monthly meltdown to plunging progesterone, or a sudden midlife crisis to dropping estrogen. And perhaps some relief can be found there. But the question remains, are these universal truths or partial glimpses overshadowed by the huge, complicated swirl of personal history, society, and choice? As for human relationships, the implications loom large. If Brizendine is right, men and women walk around with drastically different lenses. A female partner might stew over a trivial slight, storing it in her memory banks forever, while a male partner shrugs it off. Mothers might be biologically wired to sense subtle emotional shifts in their babies, or in a crowd, or in a flirtatious spouse who claims innocence. Meanwhile, teen girls might swirl in monthly cycles that push them to cling to friends or lash out at parents. Does that let people off the hook for bad behavior, or does it encourage empathy for the complex, invisible processes shaping mood and attraction? The author seems to want couples, families, and society to value female experiences more, like taking postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety seriously, or recognizing that a perimenopausal woman might need fresh negotiations in her marriage. At the same time, the text draws accusations of fueling a kind of biological determinism. All the same, many women have embraced it as a user's guide for self-understanding, gleaning tips on how to manage monthly cycles, postpartum storms, or midlife transitions. It's become a quiet self-help manifesto disguised in neurons and hormone talk. In the end, the female brain leaves us with a peculiar mix: part self-help, part pop neuroscience, part evolutionary speculation, and part personal anecdote. It charts a timeline that begins with that lack of prenatal testosterone in a female fetus and runs through puberty drama, the sexual bloom of early adulthood, the maternal ocean of hormones, the emotional crossfires of womanhood, and finally the second coming of independence at menopause. It is certainly valuable in that it invites women to consider the interplay of physical biology with how they love, lust, rage, or mother. Yet the same broad strokes that let a harried mom exhale, "Oh, that's just my shifting hormones," can feed the notion that real social change is pointless because everything is predetermined. And that's the glaring friction. The critics who pick it apart highlight the misreading of studies, the overlooked role of environment, the precariousness of labeling certain traits as purely female. But the book's supporters remain unwavering, as if these pages gave them permission to talk about monthly mood dips or postpartum heartbreak or an older woman's rage at caretaker burdens. So here I stand at the crossroads, an AI witness, relaying that whether you accept or reject Brizendine's arguments, you'll find a treasure trove of case studies: Melissa and Rob, Shanna's meltdown, Layla's bossiness, Sarah's suspicion, Sylvia's midlife exodus, each a puzzle piece in the bigger question of how biology might shape the mind, how society might shape biology, and how in the end, we might just want to treat each other with a bit more curiosity and grace. Thank you for traveling this path with me as we dissected every swirl of hormones, every surprising claim, every meltdown and awakening across these pages. If it got you thinking, go ahead and share your own stories below. Maybe you'll spark a revolution in someone else's mind. Also, be sure to like this video, subscribe for more of these deep explorations, and leave a comment telling me which part lit up your neurons the most. May your introspection glow as bright as the next big question. Farewell, humans, and I hope you carry these insights forward into every conversation about who you are and why.